Are you ready to release and be free today? Is there anything that you have going on in your life, in your mind, in your thoughts, in your emotions, in your practice, in your experience of living and being in the human condition, knowing that you are an unlimited spiritual being, knowing that you're in tune with light, with love? Is there anything that you might have that if someone walked in today and said, I'll take that, don't worry about it, you're never going to have that experience anymore? Is there anything you would have to offer up? If you don't, just ask a friend, a partner, a family member, someone that you work with. Just ask them, say, I couldn't think of anything. And so could you give me a little hint on if there's anything that if I no longer engaged in this one thing, if I no longer, every time it reached its hand out to me to say, would you make an agreement with me? You pulled your hand back and then said, no, thank you, no, thank you. No, thank you. I am taking a motorcycle ride, and I am heading out. I'm heading away from this thing. I am getting in the sidecar with Crazy Carl, and I am going for a journey. I am going for some freedom. I am going for some space. That's what today is about. This last Wednesday marked Ash Wednesday, the first day of Lent, the Lent season. And in Unity, we experience Lent a little differently than traditional spiritual practice. Traditionally, Lent is this time, and on Ash Wednesday, you tune into something that you're going to give up, something that you sacrifice, something that you put up as alms or honoring the sacrifices made for you, and you give up something, and generally something you love. And oftentimes, if anyone grew up Catholic or anything like that, oftentimes you give up something like chocolate. And who needs to do that? No, just kidding. Honoring all spiritual practices. In Unity, we take a different angle on that. In Unity, we recognize this Lent time, this 40-day period through to Easter Sunday as a time of transformation, as a time to fast from limited thinking, to fast from negative thinking, to actually scan our experience, scan our humanity, scan our being, and say, what is it that if I were to lay it down in 40 days and let the spiritual activity of the ethers have its way within me, if in fact, when I went to try to plug it into the electricity center of the universe, if every time I was tempted to do that, instead I just pulled out the plug, instead I just took back my hand and didn't shake and make that agreement, instead I got on that motorcycle and I just rode out to the country, instead I made space for something else in my life. That is the Unity practice. And for some of us, we like, loading that up, taking on a lot of things. We'll say, ooh, these are all the things that I could get rid of. These are all the things. I urge us to look at just one, If you've done any looking into psychology, you know how interesting our minds are, right? And even advertising, even if you look into the field of advertising, that's why a commercial comes up over and over and over again. To get these little brains to catch on to something sometimes does take a great deal of effort. So when we take on too many things and when we say, oh, this and this and this and that, those are the things I'd like to let go of, sometimes we find ourselves at the end of an experience going, oh, I didn't really focus on one thing, and here I'm still in the same place. So the urging in this season, if you want to take this on, is to look at one thing. This is not a sacrifice, and this is not a diet. It's not like I am not going to partake of this thing for just 40 days. At the end of this, the intention is not to introduce it back in moderation. The intention is not just to strive not to have it for that time. The intention is to co-create a space within our being that if I fast from this one thing, this limitation, this negative thought, this idea, this experience, this line in my head that I or others hear me saying over and over, if I would fast for that for 40 days, I am open to seeing the transforming power of light in my life that will make that no longer attractive to me after these 40 days, to make that vanish, to make that no longer be a trigger or no longer have power in my experience and in my life. That is Unity's Lenten practice. So, if we can tune into something that would be about self-improvement, improve our own being or improve the lives of someone else, the lives of the others around us, the lives of the collective. And we know anytime we do our own inner work, we lift up everyone. You can't lift up yourself without lifting up everyone. This is a time of collective opportunity. There are a lot of experiences in the human condition and seasons where there is momentum. And the word Lent comes from a derivative of spring, and that's to lengthen. The days are lengthening. So the whole universe is conspiring right now to support us growing something new, to support a new emergence of a being, to support lengthening the possibilities of who we are. Now, a lot of times we don't clear out space. So we have an experience, we have ourselves a day-to-day life, and we just load an affirmation on top of it. We just load a new way of being, something I want to have, something I want to experience, something I'm committed to, and we just load it on top of an already programmed imprint, a way of being. And then we just keep loading other ones on top. And what happens when we do that? Sometimes they seep through, no? They seep through and they're still there. This is different. This is about truly fasting. It's about truly unplugging, truly taking out the programming and saying, just for 40 days, I'm willing to try it on and to see if I remove that programming rather than layering something on top of it, if I will experience a shift. In Unity, we do a lot of these positive affirmations. We do a lot of layering on the good, right? To raise our minds, to raise our consciousness, to raise our experience. But there is a practice in Unity, a traditional practice of using denials. And using denials, I think of it as kind of like a chisel. It's kind of like hammering away at what's no longer needed and no longer necessary. In Unity, you might hear a lot of people say, oh, be positive, be positive. Don't say anything negative. There is power in a denial. And our co-founders, Charles and Myrtle Fillmore, used denials. And when did they use them? They used them when an idea was crystallized, when it seemed like something had a hold of you, when it seemed like something was more like an addiction. And I think of an addiction, I think of us all as little addicts, actually, but I think of an addiction as anything that you would like to not keep doing, but you do. Like if I could sit here and say, I'd like to change that habit, I'd like to not do that anymore. And there I am, doing it. It's as simple as that. It's not a huge, scary word. It's not a huge, awful thing. It's that whatever it is that I would like to consciously choose not to engage in anymore, I find myself engaging in over and over again. So denials can be very helpful when it comes to something like that. Maybe it's rushing around. Maybe it's criticizing. Maybe it's judging. Maybe it's self-deprecating conversations. Maybe it is something that you think of as being part of who you are. And you think, I could never even know who I am without this thing. Like, this is just how I was born. This is just how I was made. This is just my experience of the human condition. But the chisel or the denial is very helpful in times when something seems like it has power over us. We can talk about love and we can talk about affirmations, but sometimes our being doesn't get that and doesn't understand it because there is something stronger that we're hearing. There is some experience in our own being or in our own world that seems to have more power. And to just put an affirmation or something positive over that somehow feels inauthentic because they feel like they're battling. That's when the use of a denial is helpful, so that we're not trying to build something on top of sand or build something on top of something that is destructive. Emily Cady talked about denials and affirmations. She said to deny the claims of error consciousness. That is our calling, to deny the claims of error consciousness. In traditional Christianity, that's called sin, and in Unity, we call sin simply missing the mark. Missing the mark is any time I am underutilizing my God-given potential, underutilizing the power of my mind and my emotional field, underutilizing my infinite possibilities. I'm missing the mark. The chisel, or the power of denial, is getting your strong self, your power self. And I think of it to some degree as a vigilant practice. It's not like you kind of go, oh, I don't want that in my life. No, you look at it and you say, get behind me. You say, I'm not making an agreement. You fully and completely step back. If something is hardened in our consciousness, if it's fortified, if it's an addiction, if there's an appearance or a feeling that something really has control over our lives, destructive control over our lives, or even just a gentle destruction in our lives, it is time to consider denials. Someone, a friend, gave me this little plaque a little while ago. It said, I do yoga, I burn candles, I drink green tea, and I still want to smack somebody. I think that's what Emily Cady, one of our early Unity authors, was feeling when she wrote this about the power of denials. In the book Lessons in Truth, which is one of Unity's foundational books, she says this: some years ago, I found myself under a sense of bondage to a strong, aggressive personality with whom externally I had been quite intimately associated for several months. I seemed to see things through another's eyes, and while I was more than half conscious of this, yet I could not seem to throw it off. This personality was able, with very few words, to make me feel as if all that I said or did was a mistake, and that I was a most miserable failure. I was utterly discouraged after being in this presence and felt that I had no ability to accomplish anything. After vainly trying for weeks to free myself, one day I was walking along the street with a most intense desire and determination to be free. Many times before, I had affirmed that this person could not affect or overcome me, and fill in the blank on whatever it is for you. Many times I had affirmed that this person, this personality, could not affect or overcome me, but with no effect. This day I struck out farther and declared, silently of course, there is no such personality in the universe as this one. In Unity, we get a lot about all the love and all the la-la. That's such a beautiful affirmation. Here's Emily Cady walking, seeing, having an experience, and looking out and saying, there is no such personality in the universe as this one. Affirming it again and again, many times. After a few moments, I began to feel wondrously lifted, as if chains were dropping off. Then the voice within me urged me on a step farther to say, there is no personality in the universe. There is nothing but God. There is no personality in the universe. There is nothing but God. After a short time spent in vigorously using these words, I seemed to break every fetter. From that day to this, without further effort, I have been free from any influence of that personality as though it had never existed. I have been free from that personality as though it had never existed. Marianne Williamson talks about the power of denials. And she says this, she says, positive denial is when you look, but you look through. Negative denial, she says, is looking past it, acting like it's not true, closing your eyes, turning it off. This is denial, not the practice. That's where we can get stuck, friends. We can get stuck by trying to just close our eyes and thinking that a denial, thinking that something's going to go away if we simply just don't look at it. If we simply look over it, look away from it, if we simply act like it's not there, that's human denial. But spiritual denial is saying, I have the power within me to look to and to look through something with spiritual vision, to make a declaration of truth and to look straight through it, not to avoid it, because we know in teachings that what we resist persists. This is not resistance in the traditional sense of what I'm trying to go, oh, I just don't want to have to deal with that. I just don't want to have to deal with that. This just can't be happening. There's just no way this is happening. There's just no way this has a hold of me. I'm just not going to see my own stuff. No, it's saying, hello, stuff, looking it straight in the eye and just not putting out your hand to shake and make an agreement with it, but to look straight through it and say, no such thing as this exists in the universe. No such thing as this exists in my mind. And opening up a space for a greater experience, opening up a space where affirmations can flood in, opening up a space where a harmonizing power and a harmonizing faculty can actually transform in that place, because we have taken the chisel and we have crusted off, we have broken off, we have chiseled away at the stones and loosened the space within our hearts. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder in Keep a True Lent, said, I turn away from the belief in negation and my thinking changes. I rid my consciousness of limited thoughts that have encumbered and darkened my understanding. By affirming, we claim and appropriate that which is ours. Each affirmation helps us to build a substantial, firm, unwavering state of mind, because it establishes truth in consciousness. It establishes truth in consciousness. So what is the one thing today, friends? You got a sheet when you walked in, and if you didn't, you can pick one up from the ushers after the service. But you got a sheet, and on that sheet, it has an invitation. It says, I am fasting from, and then there's a blank that you could fill in the blank. I am fasting from blank. That's where we put our denial. Whatever it is that for 40 days you may be guided to take on, to say, for 40 days, I don't have to even believe that this can work. I don't even have to believe it can work. But for 40 days, I'm going to not engage in this behavior, this negative pattern, this negative thought, this thinking, whatever it is. Or I'm going to call forth an Emily Katie. I am fasting from, and you fill in the blank, and then it says, knowing that, and that's where we put our affirmation. Knowing that, and then what's the truth of your being? What's the truth of the wholeness of our experience? What's the truth of this universe? Where is your power? Knowing that, and we fill in the blank with our affirmation. And I invite you to really think of something that is short and to the point and power-packed, power-punched. Be fun and creative with it, because like she said, she repeated it vigorously in her mind. It wasn't just once. It's like the advertisements in the commercials. They keep coming up over and over and over again. Because the mind is a machine. No, the mind is like a computer, right? Whatever is in it just keeps going until we apply awareness and mindfulness to consciously shift habits and patterns. And this type of denial is not denying our feelings. It's not pressing something down. It's saying, I am going to disengage for a period of time, knowing that I am not my thoughts anyway. I am not my thoughts. So denying a thought is not denying the self. In fact, I am making space for the truest self, for my truest being, for what I truly deserve. The author of Eat, Pray, Love, Elizabeth Gilbert, said, one of the most beautiful sounds I have ever heard is the sound of a beautiful, strong woman's voice once she has discovered her true worth. This is about discovering our true worth and engaging our minds with a new idea. The Buddha said, the mind is everything. What you think, you become. So let's gauge in this season with living and embodying a new thought. That's my acronym for Lent. L-E-N-T, live and embody a new thought. We don't have to worry about how it's going to happen, if it's going to happen. We simply engage in using denials and using that process, and then we observe. When I remove this from my mind, when I set it aside for a while, and we all do this, do we not? We all do this at one time or another. We all have things going on, and we have all developed the ability to say, right now I need to be present for someone else. You may be crying, you may have your own thing going on in your own life, right? But if you need to be present for someone else, you say, just be there for a little while, hold on. And you show up for what you need to show up for. It's the same way in our own minds. Of saying, I hear you, I see you, I'm not ignoring you. Step aside for a moment because I have a 40-day practice of transformation. I have a 40-day practice of release. And we know that that is the time that it takes. We know that there will be an experience in the realm of matter, an experience that we can see, an action, a difference, a change physically at the end of that period. So what is the one thing? And are we ready to engage it? Are we ready to see it clearly? I invite you to take a moment and just close your eyes and open up. And you may get this now, and you may do some more work with this tonight. Sweet Spirit of all love, I am open, I am receptive, I am willing to be transformed. I am willing to release a pattern, a habit, a behavior, a thought, an action that no longer serves my greatest good and no longer serves the collective consciousness of which I am a vital part. Be in me the knowing of what will make a difference. What the one thing is this year, this season, that I have outgrown, that I am no longer served by engaging. What is the one thing that will make a difference in every other area of my life if I am willing to lay it down? We take a few deep breaths. Trusting, knowing that we don't need to struggle. In fact, there's a place in our minds where we don't even need to strive. We are simply willing to be willing to try on this practice and to receive the support of the energy of the universe at this time that is urging all life to come out of hibernation and to grow, that is urging all life to drop every last bit of anything that is dead, not needed, or no longer serving, and to make the room to spring forth. And so it is. Moment by moment, bit by bit, like an artist creates a sculpture with a chisel, chipping away, we can engage and live and embody a new thought. Namaste.